We'll trim those.
Welcome into another edition of Steak, Bourbon, and Sports. This is the show in which we eat steak, drink bourbon, and talk about sports. Sometimes a little bit more of some than the others. Tonight I'm drinking Nashville Barrel Company's Order of the Robe. And if you'd like to see an uncomfortable picture of Jeremy Mandel in a robe, then you've got to go to our YouTube page to check it out.
Who would not like that?
My camera will focus, and you will see the usual suspects mixed with the robes. I guess I get the reference?
Yes. Well, no, you don't get the reference. But there's a crew of online yokels that drink whiskey and sit around in their robes. I am one of those yokels. So me doing that is...
You're actually all standing in that picture. Just wanted to let the record show that. That's Jeremy Mandel on Twitter at Jeremy Mandel. I am Ari Temkin on Twitter at Ari Sports, ARI Sports. This is Steak, Bourbon, and Sports, and this is the 2020 Bourbon Year in Review.
Yes.
2020, a horrendous year for really everything except for whiskey.
Well, and I'll tell you, some whiskey companies did have a horrendous year, and we'll be talking about that. But
no holds barred.
Well, I mean, no one's paying me, so whatever. I mean, if anybody would like to start paying me, I'm willing to accept your money and talk how great you are. But in the meantime, no holds barred.
Yeah, maybe 2021 we'll have some sponsored sections of this portion of the show.
Really
Buffalo Trace brand of the year is.
I feel like the people that give these whole, like, whenever they talk about something, this whole, like, I'm not being paid, blah, 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 blah. I just really like this. I'm open to being paid.
Yeah.
I'm okay. So if you're making whiskey, feel free to send me money, and I'll talk about how great you are.
Also send whiskey.
But it honestly, especially particularly for American whiskey, 2020 really was a pretty damn good year. We had some new brands come on the scene. We had some brands that we're used to do some really cool stuff. We've had distilleries that have not been doing very many barrel proof offerings get into the barrel proof kind of arena. And on the other side, we've had brands that did mostly nothing. Or if they did something, I didn't really like what they did. So we'll talk about that too.
2020 year was a year of rebirth. It was a year of rebirth for this show, a show that existed first on a network called Phantom on Facebook in like 2018 and then was dead, but then rebirthed in 2020 just in time for the pandemic, right before COVID-19 hit, and we were making fun of it on this show in early episodes.
Yeah, we had like 3 or 4 shows before COVID was a thing. If you want to go back and listen to me and Ari talk about how this was going to be no problem and everyone's blowing it out of proportion, feel free to go back and listen to those. And as you'll see, undoubtedly, we were absolutely correct.
Great at predicting the future.
Yes. We get hired frequently for that elsewhere.
So do you have specific categories here? Or
well, sort of. So, I'm kind of thinking I generally hate award shows because award shows have red carpets, and I hate red carpets. But this can be a fun award show because no one's coming to my condo here.
What color carpet do you like?
Well, I don't have a problem with red carpets. It's just the things that happen on red carpets that annoy me. So
we don't have to have a red carpet show. We can just get right to the whole thing, the show. We can just get right to the award.
I'm willing to wait for you to put on a tuxedo.
Well,
are we going to do that?
Thing is, I don't fit in my tuxedo anymore. 2020's been a rough year. Okay, thanks for bringing it up. Huh?
You own a tuxedo?
Of course. Doesn't every man?
No.
Doesn't every man who aspires to one day be James Bond have a tuxedo?
I don't know. You'd have to talk to somebody who aspires to be James Bond.
Yes, you don't.
No, James Bond goes places and people shoot at him. That doesn't sound good. I can drink.
If he does his job the right way, nobody's shooting at him. So what category?
I can drink crappy cocktails from my couch, thank you.
What? He drinks whiskey in the books, but for some reason they make it vodka in the movies, which is annoying.
No, and there actually is a reason for that. The reason for that was vodka at the time was kind of seen as a hoitier drink.
Right.
Connecting to the show, James Bond is almost single-handedly responsible for the whiskey glut era, where brands were
right.
It made a whole lot more whiskey than they ended up needing, because once James Bond said he wanted a martini shaken, not stirred, so did everybody else in America. So they stopped buying whiskey as they were. So these brands would just have, it's the opposite problem that we have today. They just had barrels of whiskey aging and nothing to do with them. So one of the reasons, like, for example, Wild Turkey from that era is so good, like particularly their 8-year 101 proof Wild Turkey. A lot of times the whiskey that was in there was a whole lot older than 8 years. Just because they didn't have anyone to sell it to. That's one of the many reasons why Dusty Wild Turkey from, say, the 60s, 70s, and even into the 80s is really good.
And while the Stitzel-Weller distillery was sold to Diageo and
right,
would end.
Yeah, I mean, Stitzel-Weller had just fantastic bourbon stocks, but no one was buying it.
Yeah.
So,
but the great irony is that James Bond actually drank whiskey in the books.
Right. So
that's the greatest irony of it all.
Whiskey, when it got to Hollywood, the producers thought whiskey was too blue collar for what they wanted James Bond to be.
So the ultimate whiskey drinker ended up killing whiskey in America.
Right.
Thanks, Hollywood.
Well, it didn't kill it. It's still here.
Well, it killed it. Okay, it's dead.
There were brands that didn't make it out of that, though.
Yeah, true.
But anyway, so what I wanted to talk about on the whiskey section of this show was just a few brands, a few distilleries that did really great things, a few brands and distilleries that did some terrible things. First, I think it would be a good idea to point out some brands that are brand new this year and came out firing. We had one of them on our show, actually. So kind of for lack of a better term, rookie of the year, Nashville Barrel Company came out guns blazing this year. They were, and Ari's drinking some Nashville Barrel Company right now. They have 7 now. The new picks are 8-year rye whiskey made from MGP. My understanding is they're going to be having rum. They're going to be having bourbon. Some of it substantially older, some of it younger. And as the guys talked about,
they're sitting on barrels and barrels of whiskey right now, hoping to bring us the best of what they've got.
Yeah, and they're making the barrel picking process a lot more achievable for your average whiskey drinker, which I have a lot of appreciation for. Essentially the entire premise of the company, though they do have a batch product, and that the batch product is good, but a large premise of the company is barrel picks are good. More people should do them. Come do barrel picks. So really love what they're doing. The guys running the show are great. They're going to have a fantastic facility open in Nashville. I'm not sure if it's going to be open in 2021 or 2022, but they've got a whole great distillery facility, or it's not going to be distilling, but barrel storage facility that's going to be open. It's going to be awesome, and it's going to be a great place to go visit. It's a great excuse to go visit Nashville, have some hot chicken, have some whiskey, potentially some barrel-aged rum.
I'll see you there in 2022.
Absolutely.
If not sooner.
If we are still doing this show, if the powers that be haven't canceled us, then when
it's
they
hit or
have
miss.
that thing,
I don't know. We could be on the fritz at that point.
Who knows? But if they open and the line isn't terrible, then we will do a steak, bourbon, and sports barrel pick in Nashville at some point. So specifically want to recognize them. They've done a great job as kind of the newcomer of the year.
It's the rookie of the year. You already called it the rookie of the year. You can't change it.
Oh, did they already start engraving the plaque?
They did. They're very excited about their Mandel.
Yes, the Mandelis. The next, going the big guns. The what I would call the distillery of the year this year is the Old Forester Distillery. They are, I think they would argue, they do argue, they are the oldest continuously operating distillery in America. They're a brand that until recently you really didn't hear too much about from the whiskey nerds other than their annual birthday bourbon release. Because frankly, they didn't do barrel picks at cask strength. If you wanted to do barrel pick, you were getting it at 90 proof, which is fine, but you lose a lot of the variation at 90 proof. And most people couldn't get their hands on the birthday bourbon, so really what's left to talk about? This year, they have introduced barrel strength bourbon picks into their catalog. The picks have started to come out, say, mid-year, I want to say. And they're fantastic. You know, you would always hear from people that would do picks at Old Forester for the 90 proof. Man, I wish they would just bottle it like it is and not water it down to 90 proof, because it's fantastic. And you always just say, oh, okay, you're drinking at a distillery. It's hard to say you're drinking crappy whiskey when you're drinking it in front of the master distiller or the master blender or whatever. But they started coming out this year. Those picks are anywhere from 115 proof to 135 proof. They're 6 to 8 year bourbon, and it's been really good. In addition to that, this was their 150th anniversary this year. They did a release commemorating that, and that release I thought has been very good. Their birthday bourbon came out, which I still haven't had this year's. That was really good.
Are they the oldest distillery? 150 years? Is that the oldest?
They say it is.
You haven't done your research?
If you ask Heaven Hill, they would say we trace our heritage back to Elijah Craig from the late 1700s. I would quibble with that because, I mean, great, Elijah Craig making whiskey in his barn is not exactly the same as a distillery operation.
Right, especially if you want to claim like the oldest contiguous, you know. So,
you know, the Old Forester folks really nailed it. You know, their Prohibition style, their Old Fine 1910 whiskey, all really good stuff. They are a part of the Brown-Forman family. Brown-Forman also is responsible for making Jack Daniels. Jack Daniels had a fantastic year. Their barrel strength picks that have come out have really been mostly outstanding. You know, Jack Daniels is easy to crap on because
right,
everyone and their mother drinks it.
Such a known brand for sure. You wouldn't think of it in, you know, high society bourbon whiskey world.
Yeah, and I'm not sitting here advocating you should go buy 80 proof Jack Daniels and drink it neat or whatever. I don't do that. But if you happen upon a bottle of barrel strength Jack Daniels single barrel, pick it up.
What do you like about it?
Well, it's a what I'll call a punchy whiskey. So a lot of the proof points have been pretty high, like upper 120s, low 130s in there. I think I've seen some that are like mid 130s, almost 140 proof. And they've got a really good character on all of them. They're not all the same, and they're doing a really good job with that. So it's been really, I'm singling out Old Forester, but really the whole Brown-Forman family has been really good. Even Woodford Reserve, who is a part of the Brown-Forman family, has been putting out some good, or I guess they're not, they're a part of Diageo. But they've been putting out good stuff too, which really, in my opinion, is a first for Woodford Reserve. So really good stuff there.
And the first for Diageo.
However, the whiskey of the year was not made by
Brown-Forman,
Forester, or anyone in Brown-Forman. The whiskey of the year, in my opinion, is the. Let me make sure I'm I have to very carefully consider this before I open my yap. Screw it. The whiskey of the year was the Four Roses Small Batch Limited Edition 2020 version. Now, I'll tell you, it was not the very best small batch limited edition they've ever done. And some people have called it a little messy, too many different flavor profiles kind of clashing, which is easy to do with Four Roses because Four Roses has those 10 unique mash bills, and the small batch limited editions are a recipe combining some number of those as the master distiller Brent Elliott decides. So there's a lot going on there. But every year they put out a damn fine limited edition product. It's not always the same. In fact, that's kind of the draw. Every year it's a little different. Some years a lot different. But every year it's good. You'll have some whiskey nerds quibble with that and say, yeah, but it was better 5 years ago. And I don't know that I would necessarily disagree with that, but it was still better than 98% of the whiskey that comes out. That's what I would say is kind of the whiskey of the year. Fairly soon we will be hearing from the librarian, Jimmy May, who is the owner and operator of the library. He does every year I should get Jimmy on.
I thought you were just promoting that he was going to be our guest next week. That's not what you were doing?
Well, I mean, maybe I'll call him. But every year he does his kind of Rye of the Year award. But different than what I'm talking about. When I said the Four Roses was the whiskey of the year, I'm not counting single barrel picks because it doesn't really do you a lot of good for me to say, yeah, the whiskey of the year was this single barrel and you can't get it.
Right.
So I'm only choosing among stuff that, I mean, the Four Roses is hard to get, but you may well see it at a bar.
How old was that one?
That was a combination of 4 different vintages. There was some 10-year in there. There was some 12-year in there. I think there was some 18-year in there.
And the blend is just purely up to the distiller in terms of like...
Yeah, every year, and I've actually got to hang out with Brent Elliott while he did this once, which was just an amazing experience. He basically cruises around the warehouses and says, obviously he knows, right, as the guy in charge, what's where and how old everything is. And he's got a whole kind of, they call it their experimental room, where they just put different stuff together and see what they like.
But you think he has like an idea of what the juice will taste like looking at the barrel?
Every year, and I've asked him that very question, and he has said he kind of goes where the whiskey takes him.
Interesting.
What?
Interesting.
Yeah, so like he'll know, okay, this year I've got some really good OBSV or OBSV well-aged stocks, and he has to have enough of whatever components he's choosing to know that if I like this blend, I want to be able to actually make it and produce it in the quantities that I would require. So if you got like 8 barrels of something, well, that probably doesn't cut it. But he goes through and says, okay, I've got really good V's this year, so maybe this is a V heavy year.
Very interesting.
And his opinion is the V's and the K's, OESV, OBSV, OESK, OBSK, are kind of the foundation upon what Four Roses is built. They've got other great recipes. My favorite recipe is an O recipe, which is different. But he feels like those are the 2 recipes they have that kind of everything stands on the shoulders of that. So a lot of times he'll start messing around and blending with those recipes and adding components to it. But I thought he did a fantastic job this year.
Who are some of the other sort of candidates for whiskey of the year?
Let's see. I had a whole sheet of notebook paper I was working on earlier, and now I don't remember.
I mean, we were texting earlier. You said that this was a whole thing. I thought you were going to have a presentation available.
You'd ask me who was in second place.
Well,
But
figured you tasted a decent amount of whiskeys this year. We know everybody knows this is a Four Roses show.
I have the answer. I know the answer. The second place finisher was Wild Turkey's annual special release, the 17-year-old bottled in bond edition. That was a little pricier because it comes in like the fancy box and all that stuff. But if it was not Four Roses, it would definitely be the Wild Turkey 17-year bottled in bond.
What's pricier?
I think they want like $200 for it, or $180 or something like that.
What would that come out in the secondary market then?
Not too much more. You can probably get them on the secondary market for between $200 and $300. Just a really good product. It was a great example of what is Wild Turkey when Wild Turkey is really at its best. Being that it's bottled in bond, that means it's 100 proof. That means some other things which we've gone into before and won't go into now. But the standard Wild Turkey is 101 proof, so it's very close to what their standard proof is. And it was a really kind of shining example of how good Wild Turkey can be. Wild Turkey has a problem kind of in the whiskey market as a whole, because they're sort of seen as the blue-collar, cheap guy whiskey. Because really that's what they were, and that's who they built their brand on. But that doesn't mean they can't produce some damn fine stuff. Some other candidates were the Buffalo Trace kosher editions, and I don't say that because I'm biased, but
which I've yet to unveil on this show. I have a bottle of.
There you go. We Buffalo Trace hired is not the right word. That's not how that works. But there was some kind of Chicago Rabbinical Council or whatever.
They sired a rabbi.
Yeah, they brought in some Jews.
Commissioned.
And essentially everything that's in bourbon, it's all natural ingredients. So the ingredients themselves are kosher. Essentially what it needs to be kosher is they need to have a rabbi bless the wood before it goes in there. So they did that.
Interesting.
And they put out.
So it wasn't the corn that they.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
They blessed the corn.
It was corn mixed with bacon or something. I don't know what the problem. But they put out a kosher rye.
Just thank you to Buffalo Trace for recognizing the Jews in this time of year.
That's right. They put out a wheated bourbon, which is their wheated recipe is the same recipe as the Weller line. It's the same recipe as Pappy Van Winkle.
Right.
So they're kosher wheated. They have their kosher standard rye recipe, which is the same recipe as normal Buffalo Trace. When
you say wheated, I mean that's, as you mentioned, like Pappy and Weller. So like what does that mean from a taste profile, and why is that so significant?
So a wheated bourbon means they are not using rye in the mash bill at all. They're just using wheat in the mash bill alongside the corn. So, or instead of rye. So for it to be a wheated bourbon, there has to be wheat in the mash instead of rye. There cannot be any rye in there at all. What that typically leads to, not always, is kind of a mellower, fruitier, easier to drink whiskey. Rye is, the proponents of rye would say, well, rye gives it the whiskey the character. The detractors of rye would say rye is what makes whiskey hard to drink. So the wheated recipes generally don't get produced as much. In my opinion, they're easier to screw up. We'll talk about Heaven Hill in a little bit, but they've, in my opinion, screwed up wheated whiskey or wheated bourbon, because I think their Old Fitzgerald release was garbage.
Wheat is native to Kentucky, while rye is not.
So now we know that.
So, a wheated whiskey is more Kentucky.
I mean, we just have these two Jews in Texas tell someone what's more Kentucky. I don't know, but
I mean that's a fair point. Okay.
Okay.
No, I mean your point.
Oh, yes, my points are always good.
Not always, but in this case, yes, it's fair. Fine. Rye is. I was just adding to it,
So that's so they did a good job with those.
Okay. What other awards do we have for 2020?
What's the opposite of an award? Like the anti-distillery of the year, like the distillery that I'm most disappointed in.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. I don't know that an award is what you would call it, but that distinction would go to the Heaven Hill family of products this year.
Bad Heaven Hill. Bad.
They put out their.
Brown-Forman, good year. Heaven Hill.
Not so good year.
Not so good. Upset. Very big. That's very 2020.
What is?
Just those two things.
Oh, just that they're conforming?
No, that Brown-Forman, you'd almost think the opposite. We'd be.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Disparaging Brown-Forman and lifting up Heaven Hill.
In many years, that's exactly what I would do. I'll tell you, too, as recently as, say, 2018, I would have said that the Brown-Forman family of products were my least favorite distillery. It's amazing what you can do when you stop watering down your product. So
who knew?
So Heaven Hill gets the distinction of my least favorite distiller of the year. I think with the Jim Beam Distillery coming in a very close second. But what I don't like and what gives Heaven Hill the nod is their special releases, in my opinion, this year didn't cut it. Their Parker's Heritage, I don't remember if the orange Curacao barrels were this year or last year, but that was basically, it tasted like bourbon mixed with orange juice. There's a reason that doesn't really exist. The Old Fitzgerald releases, while better than when they were younger, still are not particularly good. That's one of their weeded offerings. And it just has kind of this Heaven Hill peanutty sort of taste. They were doing Larceny, which is their other weeded bourbon. They released a few barrel-proof Larceny editions, which was very exciting because they had never done that before. And I didn't think much of it. Had kind of that same peanutty, not great taste that the Old Fitzgerald offerings had. Elijah Craig barrel proof is always good. But to me, that was really the only thing they had this year that was really worth mentioning. They've taken the age statement a few years ago off of their Elijah Craig. It used to be Elijah Craig 12 year. Now it's just Elijah Craig. Because most of it, instead of being 12 years old, is about 7, 8, 9 years old. And that really by itself gives them the nod over the Jim Beam Distillery for what I'll call most disappointing distillery of the year, I guess. Kudos to Jim Beam, because they, I believe, were the first major distillery to put age statements back on the bottle. They put a 9-year age statement out on a Knob Creek release. They had taken it off a number of years ago. Now their Knob Creek private barrel picks have been good. I think Booker's is always good. I liked the batch they had out this year. The Booker's 30th edition was 2019, not 2020, but it was damn good too. They produce a lot of stuff I don't love. Obviously, regular Jim Beam I'm not crazy about. What has become of Old Grandad I don't enjoy. And there's some other examples in there too. But they did have some stuff come out this year that I enjoyed, which is really more than I could say for Heaven Hill this year.
There you go. You're on notice, Heaven Hill, and Jim Beam, good job. You stepped it up just a little bit.
So
you're basically second place of last place.
Yeah. Look, I like whiskey. So even my least favorite places will have, my last place distillery, Heaven Hill, still has a product that I enjoy. Elijah Craig Barrel Proof is good stuff. But
all right,
they didn't do as much as some other brands.
Steak, bourbon, and sports. Steak. Do you have a steak award here?
Well, it's not an award so much as I was on the phone today. I've ordered half a cow.
Okay.
And
congratulations, Jeremy. You've won Steak of the Year in 2020 for ordering half of a cow.
Well, I do win Steak of the Year for 2020, but that's for other exploits I did this year. But there was a lot of cooking at home, so the competition was not exactly fierce in 2020. But I've got half of a Wagyu cow coming to me, and it turns out half a cow is a lot of meat. So we'll be following my adventures here, I believe either this week or next. I was on the phone with the butcher today.
Half of a cow?
Yeah.
How much? How many pounds is that?
Well, I don't know, because the cow is about...
A lot of pounds.
Well, it's like 3,000 pounds or so. But that's like the alive cow weight.
Right.
Like
it's not all meat.
Yeah, like I'm not getting the hooves or anything like that. And
so how much that is 1,000 pounds?
I'm gonna find out. I'm gonna find out. I'll send you some of the meat. You can try it and tell me if it's good. It's a Wagyu cow.
If you get half of the cow, you're getting essentially at least every cut, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
So, I'm getting...
Where did you order this from?
So, a friend of the program, Jarrett Hudick, and I had been sort of working on this slowly.
So he bought the other half.
He did not buy the other half. I actually don't know what happened to the other half. Somebody bought it. But we had agreed to kind of slow play this thing until after I'd moved, because once I had moved, I've got an outside refrigerator and freezer now. That's all kinds of...
Have you told your wife about this?
She's aware of it.
Okay.
But also, I'm not taking all of it myself. I don't know what's the opposite of friend of the program? Enemy of the program?
Yes.
Enemy of the program.
Jim Beam is taking the other half.
Yeah. Enemy of the program, David Maisel, will be taking part.
He's a friend of the program? He listens. He's one of our few listeners.
Not a friend of the program because I'm currently quarantined because of him.
Well, teaches you a lesson. You shouldn't be hanging out within 6 feet without a mask of David Maisel.
The lesson is I shouldn't be hanging out with him at all. I mean, it's not so bad. I'm coming to you live from a condo in Port Aransas, which is where we've chosen to isolate, at least for this part.
It's devastating. I see you're wearing a fishing shirt and you've got really nice art behind you. It must be devastating.
Well, me wearing a fishing shirt does not mean I'm at Port Aransas. It's Tuesday.
True, but it does notate it to a certain degree.
Yeah, earlier I was wearing a Macho Man t-shirt.
That notates a Tuesday night.
It was a Macho Man t-shirt, though. It said, it didn't have a picture of him. It just said Macho Man, Randy Savage, Tower of Power, too sweet to be sour. But it was in a classy sort of way.
Do we have any sports awards for 2020?
Worst Sportscaster of the Year goes to Ari Temkin for telling you that the Cowboys were going to be good. I don't know if
they are good.
Well, potential division champion Dallas Cowboys.
7. I mean, was like, hang a banner for a 7-9 division championship if it ends up happening.
You're damn right they should. By the way, so questions on this front.
The Lakers won the finals. Kobe died. The Lakers won the finals. COVID happened. Sports paused. What else happened? Somebody won the MLB playoffs, the World Series. Somebody won that.
Moment of the year, not because I enjoyed it the most, but because I feel it was most representative of the year, was Dr. Fauci's first pitch at the Nationals game. I don't know if you saw this, but Dr. Fauci's first pitch was way closer to first base than home plate. Which, I mean, all in all, it was just such a 2020 moment.
Totally. It 100% epitomized 2020.
Yeah, like this guy who's in charge of infectious diseases, here he is to throw this pitch, and it's like the worst pitch you've ever seen. Yay, America. I will will say, this year until recently, my sportsman of the year is James Harden. And I base this solely on what sports figure brought me the most joy in 2020. And no question, it was James Harden. I've enjoyed every bit of the James Harden experience. I don't know if you've watched the game he was in last night. I didn't catch him go above a brisk jog the entire game. That was delightful. So sports year, James Harden.
How much is he making to do the brisk jogging he's going to be doing for 80, 60 games or whatever it is?
Dollars. It's a good thing Tillman Fertitta is not like a immature, vengeful kind of guy. Oh, wait, he is.
This is going to work out so well.
Like, the morning after James Harden is eventually traded, I would like Tillman Fertitta is going to have a hitman on the guy's front lawn. $30 million to embarrass me severely. It's unbelievable. Like, nowhere but the NBA could that sort of thing happen.
Wow. Jeremy, you were really prepared for this. This is fantastic.
Yeah, you weren't expecting that, were you?
No, I'm not going to lie. Well done.
I'm a broadcaster.
So I guess my hope is, I suppose you can call this a resolution, I will bring more to the table in 2021.
Oh, don't be so hard on yourself. I like to be hard on you. I don't like to hear you be hard on you.
For Jeremy Mandel on Twitter at Jeremy Mandel, you can send whatever free whiskey and money you'd like to his Port Aransas Beach House. Just send it to Jeremy Mandel at Port Aransas Beach House, Port Aransas, Texas.
Yeah, just slap a stamp on that. It'll get to you. Remember, we still want you to rate the show, and we still are very enthusiastic about ratings that are complimentary towards me, but not necessarily Ari. We like those kinds of ratings.
Right, because Jeremy went on a really awesome secretive barrel pick that you could potentially get your hands on if you are complimentary of Jeremy and not complimentary of Ari.
That's right. Now, that barrel is supposed to be landing around Valentine's Day, so you still have time. So get on in there and say nice things about me and make fun of Ari. But give us 5 stars. So that'll be nice.
And that was at the Four Roses, that's right. 4 Roses.
The Roses pick. It was a OESD recipe. Really, really strong stuff.
Well, I guess for now, Jeremy, why don't you impart some wisdom on us for 2020 as we say goodbye to this memorable year.
Let's all be #nasal strong. And we'll talk to you in 2021.